Global growth is expected to slow further next year, the IMF said today, downgrading its forecast as countries grapple with the fallout from Russia's invasion of Ukraine, spiraling cost of living and economic downturns, and much more. In its report, the IMF trimmed its 2023 global GDP forecast to 2.7%, to 0.2% down from its July expectations. Its world growth forecast for this year remains unchanged at 3.2%.
Forecast for this year is unchanged at 3.2%, while our projection for 2023 is lowered to 2.7%, 0.2 percentage points lower than the July forecast. The 2023 slowdown will be broad-based, with countries accounting for a third of the global economy expected to contract this year or next. The three largest economies, the United States, China, and the euro area, will continue to stall. In short, the worst is yet to come, and for many people, 2023 will feel like a recession. In China, we have lowered next year's growth forecast to 4.4% due to a weakening property sector and continued lockdowns. The slowdown is most pronounced in the euro area, where the energy crisis caused by the war will continue to take a heavy toll, reducing growth to 0.5% in 2023. Almost everywhere, rapidly rising prices, especially for food and energy, are causing serious hardships for vulnerable households. Despite the slowdown, inflation pressures are proving broader and more persistent than anticipated. Global inflation is now expected to peak at 9.5% in the third quarter of 2022, before decelerating to 4.1% by 2024. Inflation is also broadening beyond food and energy. Global core inflation rose from an annualized monthly rate of 4.2% at the end of 2021 to 6.7% in July for the median country. Downside risks remain elevated, and policy trade-offs have become acutely challenging. Here are a few of the ones we highlight in our report. The risk of monetary, fiscal, or financial policy miscalibration has risen sharply at a time of high uncertainty and growing fragilities. Global financial conditions could deteriorate and the dollar strengthen further should turmoil in financial markets erupt. Inflation could yet again prove more persistent, especially if labor markets remain extremely tight. Finally, the war in Ukraine is still raging, and further escalation can exacerbate the energy crisis. Our October World Economic Outlook report presents a risk assessment around our baseline projections. With 25% probability, global growth next year could slow down to below 2%, a historically low level. We've only had that 5 times since 1970. If many of the risks materialize, global growth would decline to 1.1%, with quasi-stagnant income per capita next year.
All right, Arise correspondent Nkechi Nnana joins me now from Washington, D.C. for more on this. Nkechi, good morning. Good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. So, Pierre Olivier there saying that the worst is yet to come. Next year is going to feel like a recession for most people. The dollar could get stronger. What do you make of what you've been seeing there? What do you make of it all so far?
Yes, Rotus, as we fear the world economic outlook is bearing bad news. Once again, like we know, the IMF is lowering its projection for global economic growth in 2023. Now it's projecting world economic growth to be lower by $4 trillion, and that's through 2026. And just to put that in context, that's the size of economic growth of Germany. So like you said, things are more likely to get worse before it gets better. And the director of the research department for IMF, Pierre Olivier, is just blaming this on, obviously, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, cost of living crisis, slowdown in China, COVID and climate disasters. And this has just changed the outlook on the economy. And also there's the risk of recession, like you mentioned, in 2023, and this keeps rising. And IMF estimates that countries are making up 1/3 of the world economy. We'll see at least 2 consecutive quarters of economic contraction this year and next year. So, Rotus, like the TikTokers say, the pressure is getting worse on economic global outlook.
Wow. Okay. Hey, look, it sounds really, really dire. I think we just had some of those global projections on there. What do you make of these projections? It just seems like things are going to get tougher. That maybe we should be hiding cash under our mattresses next year. What do you make of the projections?
Maybe not hiding cash under your mattress. We know that the institution has downgraded its global growth projections already 3 times. This is the 4th. Now, the forecast, like the research department said, is to slow down from 6% in 2021 to 3.2% in 2022 and then 2.7% in 2023. Now, these projections are also coming as central banks around the world are raising interest rates. And this is in hopes to just tame the rising inflation. But we know that raising interest rates has a corresponding effect, obviously, on consumers, businesses. And so there's a concern that in taming this inflation, it might also tame production. Now, it will become more difficult for businesses to access loans, and it might just lead to a reduction of production, like I said, and also trade, which will slow down more the economic growth. But on the other hand, when there's higher interest rates, it means higher borrowing costs. So maybe people will eventually start spending less and putting their money under the mattress, like you said, and you have demand for goods and services then drop, which will cause inflation to fall. In the economic world outlook, it showed that inflation rose from 4.7% in 2021 to 8.8% in 2022. However, they're expecting a decline to 6.5% in 2023 and then maybe to 4.1% by 2024. But don't get your hopes high, because these projections are just coming down still from a high level. So in the case that there's some sort of positive growth, people are still going to feel like they are in a recession, Reuters.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you for that breakdown. So, Nkechi, what about Africa's largest economy, Nigeria? What does this mean for this nation? You know, we've got an election coming up next year, all these economic headwinds. What does this projection mean for us here in Nigeria?
Yes, Reuters. Also, Nigeria had its own growth forecast in the World Economic Outlook, which is 3.6% in 2021, and now downgraded to 3.2% this year, 2022, and back to 3% expected in 2023. And just basically, you know how the IMF World Bank Group always just dishes out advice to emerging economies. It's advising African central bankers, banks, and also Nigeria to just stay the course on basically using traditional banking instruments in order to cushion these crises that the emerging markets are facing. And in any case that there's some sort of reason why they should move to non-conventional ways, we just have to ask ourselves why these traditional instruments are not working. Also, continuing from the spring meetings, we know that the IMF was advising Nigeria just basically on running multiple exchange rate systems. So we're going to hear more on that. They keep saying it's complicated. It's not as effective as it would have been if there was a single exchange rate. It just makes the market more stable. Today, there's a Commonwealth Central Bankers meeting. We have CBN governor there, but it's a closed meeting. We're not privy to that meeting, what's going on in the meeting yet. But I have reports that it's just basically to discuss vital strategies to address emerging economic issues, including tackling inflation, debt burden in the Commonwealth. Also on Thursday, Minister of Finance Zainab Ahmed will be participating in a debate on the global economy. So hoping to hear from her, maybe just speak to her on the sides of the IMF World Bank annual meeting here in Washington.
All right, Nkechi Nnana, boots on the ground in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much. We'll be looking forward to more from you as the proceedings continue there, the IMF World Bank spring meetings. Thank you so much.